So let's talk about what we're here for, which is walkthroughs. So what is a walkthrough? I get this question a lot because it's a term that I really didn't hear a lot until we started using it in the market. A walkthrough is when a staff member, so one of my team members, walks through a property to assess and document the condition of the property for purpose of lease enforcement documentation and property preservation. So this is something that this is the team that does it. So these are our repairs guys. We have a couple newbies who aren't in this picture. This picture is, I think, about 2 months old, but we've got a huge team. All of our guys are full-time employees, fully run. Of course, they're background checked, all of that. They're all in company vehicles. They're all in-house trained. We do not use third parties for this. These are all my guys. Same guys walking into my properties or the same one walking into yours. The individual who is second from the right in front is Adam Rossell. That is the manager of that team. Adam has worked with me in one capacity or another for going on like 10 years. Really great guy. This is just my guys in field. In addition to this, we have 5 people overseeing the repairs team in office, and that is all they do. So the total team is like 17 people. So I would say that you'd be hard pressed to find another company like us that has this type of offering. And so really what we are doing is checking on the property, checking on the tenant, making sure that we have enough knowledge to make decisions and hold accountability for anything pertaining to the property. We recommend doing these walkthroughs once per quarter for our best tenants. There are tenants who see us more frequently. Some of you may have some of those tenants. If we find a serious level violation, they're going to see us more frequently. But most tenants, they see us once every quarter. The photos are on a timestamped report, and this is for your protection and ours, so that the tenant can't say that something was there at that point in time. This is a great tool at move outs because a tenant can say something like, oh, that door had a hole in it at move in. Well, not only do we have move-in photos showing there was no hole in that door, we have quarterly walkthrough reports showing there was no hole in that door. So some of it is for monitoring items like foundation movement, size of cracks, etc. Some of it is for monitoring the tenant. And then some of it is just so that we know what's going on with the property and we can look at it time after time. And it's a great way to have a trackable record of your tenant, the condition, etc. This is also great when we find things like unauthorized pets where the tenant says, oh, I didn't have a pet on my property. Well, here's a picture of the pit bull on the door trying to eat us. So it's a great tool to be able to have accountability. It notes issues, citations, and then the items that we see that need to be done. Even if it's a tenant responsibility, we're going to provide a price and we're going to give the tenant the opportunity to fix it. And if they don't, they know exactly what it's going to cost for us to do it and bill it back to them. An average walkthrough on a property that is in good condition takes 20 to 30 minutes. They can take a whole lot longer if they're bad. It takes another 20 plus minutes to put the report together. And so the total time per property every quarter is about an hour. This is a huge, huge thing that most companies, when we started doing this, we started doing walkthroughs day one. So for a couple of you that have been with me for almost 15 years, you remember it was me doing the walkthroughs for years, me and Michael. We used to do other crazy things too, like drive house to pick up rent because there was no online payments back then. Luckily, we don't have to do that anymore. But it's something that we felt was important day one. And because I'm a believer that if you don't know what's going on and you don't check on that tenant, you're going to have a lot of things that get out of control. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Our costs for our walkthroughs each quarter are free. That is inclusive in your management fee. And our team does walkthroughs 5 days a week, every single week. There is a couple things that we have done the last couple of weeks to make sure that our team and our tenants are protected. One of those things, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, is we have suspended walkthroughs. I originally suspended them for 14 days. I have suspended them for another 14 days. We are still doing all repairs, not just emergency repairs. We are still running tasks, make readies. We are still following up on violations. We are not doing routine walkthroughs. There's a few reasons for that, and I'm sure most of you can understand why I've made that call, but let me walk you through my train of thought. Number one, we don't want the liability of someone saying that we got them sick. We want to avoid that at all costs. Number two, we don't want to be walking into properties where children are home from school and alone. We will not walk in a property if a minor is home alone. That is for our protection and theirs. In addition to that, tenants are home, tenants are agitated. We want to do everything we can to keep them in a good mood so that they pay rent. So we're going to be reassessing this every 2 weeks. I'm gone ahead and suspended 2 more weeks. This is week 1. Next week will be week 2. When we see where the numbers are at that point with the new cases, we will start to make decisions area by area. Of course, Dallas County is much heavier affected than Collin County and Denton County and Grayson County and all of the northern areas. So we may open up walkthroughs in some areas and not others. We may open up in Dallas and not in Houston. We will be looking at the numbers and we will do everything that we can to get back into those houses as soon as possible. That being said, it appears that school is going to be out for the rest of the year. I, along with many other people in this state, are homeschooling, or they call it regular school, but it is homeschooling, 2 teenagers, 2 10th graders. And it's not easy and it's not fun for them or for me. And it's one of those things that we are just going to have to roll with what's happening. We will do everything we can to get into those properties. If the parents are home, it's a lot easier. But if the parents are go back to work in 2 to 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and those children are still stuck at home, it will be impossible to get into those properties that are tenant occupied. So we'll figure out what we need to do. Maybe we need to move them to weekends for those people. I don't know. You have my commitment that I will get into every property and every unit as soon as I can. And I will be as transparent with you as I can be to make sure that you know what's going on, what our business plan is. I will repeat again that our business, our income, our solvency, our employees are unaffected by this. Nothing will change with us. We have actually hired 2 people since we last spoke. So none of that's going to change. This is 100% about trying to do the best we can to make sure that we are keeping everybody safe. But we will get back on these properties. And if you have a problem tenant, nothing will change. So how we notify the tenants of an upcoming walkthrough. We use a program called Gorilla Desk. It's fantastic. And every tenant is in there with email and text. As long as they allow text messaging, they will receive notification before the walkthrough via both. And in that notification, it's going to remind them to make sure their filter's been changed, because our goal is not to do things and bill it back to them. Our goal is for them to do what they're supposed to do under the lease. So they have to change that air filter every single month, and we're going to be checking every quarter to make sure it's been done. So if they didn't change it every month, it's obvious we can change it, bill it back to them. But the goal is to get them to do it. They have to crate or remove their pets, so they can't let their pet run around. That's required. And they have to leave the keyless deadbolts unlocked so that we can access inside the property. If for any reason we can't enter because of those items, then they will be billed a lockout fee. And that is, again, to make sure that they understand that we will get in anytime we need to be there. And that's something that they know to expect. And it's the same every single time. If the walkthrough is rescheduled, they receive notification of that as well. So I believe the notification settings are 2 days out and 1 day out. And so they always have plenty of notice that we are coming. And then of course they don't need to be there because we have a key to every single property under our management. Now, why do we offer this? I get this question a lot. Funny enough, when I speak on panels and things, this is the biggest question I get. How do you afford to do walkthroughs? How do you afford to have that in-house team? I sat on a panel with another property management investor, and he was an investor in a property management company with 5,000 doors. And he came up to me after and he said, "We're still not making any money. How are you doing this?" I laughed. I said, "You need a better person running your business, but it's very expensive. The single most expensive item in my office is walkthroughs." Why? Because it doesn't cover cost. There's nothing to do to cover that cost. It's a direct just pass through. So it's less expensive move out for you. That is, at the end of the day, the biggest reason we do it. Yes, it's to hold tenants accountable. Yes, it's to check on the property, but it is 100% about your money. That is the most important thing. And so, you know, at the end of the day, if we can get ahead of the repairs, we can make the tenants fix the items, it is a compounding effect of everything to do with re-renting and selling. Let me give you an example. If a tenant has dirty carpet and we don't make them clean that dirty carpet, that carpet's going to get worse and worse. The stain is going to age. And by the time we go to re-rent that property, that carpet is not salvageable. If a tenant has kids or and they're getting grime on the walls and we don't make them clean it when it starts, what happens is we wind up having to repaint the entire house. It's a slow progression. So part of it is helping them understand what we expect and fixing little items as they come up. But it's also about just making sure that things are mitigated as early as possible. The biggest example I give people is foundation movement. And a lot of people, we notice foundation movement, we recommend getting it assessed. A lot of the time we watch it. You know, we can generally tell what's normal versus what's not. And because each report has photos of cracks or movement signs, we can compare them quarter to quarter. And because the same people are walking into your house or your unit, they know what it looked like before. And so when we tell you to send someone out to assess that we'd like to send someone to assess it for free, that is us telling you we have watched the signs, we have seen what's going on, and we recommend you take care of it. When you don't do it, or you don't send someone because you don't want to spend the money, or whatever the situation may be, if that's the position you're in, as that foundation keeps moving, now you've got a foundation that's in a lot worse shape. Now you've got more sections of the house moving. Now you're having slab leaks. Now you're having gas leaks. It's not just a house settling, it's the systems that are built into that slab or the pier and beam underneath settling as well. So it's about catching things early. You know, if we catch a sign that a tenant is not watering early, we generally can get ahead of it. Or if we have to remove that tenant or non-renew them and seek a new tenant, these are all reports we can go back to and be able to look at. And if we're making the tenant keep it in better condition during the tenancy, then we're able to do our 2-month re-renting period, which is paramount to keeping vacancy rates negligible. And so when we make sure that the property is as show ready as possible, then we can go and show the property during that lease. But if we take over a property where a tenant's been in that unit for 5 or 6 years, no one's been watching it, we go site them, there's nothing that I can do at that point in time because that carpet is already 5 years worth of damage. The paint is already 5 years worth of damage. We can tell them to repaint, we can tell them to get it cleaned, but at the end of the day, the damage is already done. So the goal is to get ahead of it. Now, there are economic life expectations for certain items like carpet and paint. So we have to keep that in mind as well. And wear patterns and things that are outside of a tenant's control in a long-term lease, those are items we have to look at too. But if the carpet is starting to get dirty and matted and they clean it, it will get it kind of the pile removed back up and we're going to extend the life of that carpet. If we don't have them do anything, or many of you who come to us from other companies or self-managing, you've seen this, that carpet just stays matted. And then at that point, there's no saving it because it's been like that for so long. So anyway, that is my main mental reasoning for why we have to do walkthroughs. So the other piece that I look at is our goal is to sell every 2 to 6 years. Whether you buy it with us or someone else, the goal is to have enough equity in that property that you can 1031 and build your portfolio. So the property also has to be sell ready at any time. But if you're going to sell it for top dollar, it needs to look good. It's no real difference than re-renting. So we want to make sure that we're keeping all of that in mind as we do this stuff. Now, there's also advance notice of tenant issues. I can't tell you how many times we walk into a property and catch a tenant moving. How many times we walk into a property and catch an unauthorized occupant. These are all the little different things that we are looking for. It can give us advance notice. We've been in properties before in the dead of winter and they're not running their heat. And that's an automatic sign for us that they're having financial trouble. So there's some other things that we can see signs of as well. Probably the biggest money item that we find is insurance liability issues. So if we go to a property and that tenant has a liability issue that can void or vacate your insurance policy, that's going to be considered a high risk violation. That would be things like an aggressive breed dog at the property, an above ground pool, a trampoline, those types of items. And those are always going to be something we're going to cite them to remove. And that is going to be something that's a big deal. Okay, if we find something small like maybe their house, their kitchen sink is really dirty, or maybe their bathtub needs to be scrubbed, and we're still going to cite them to do this, but it's not something that we're going to treat as a 10 out of 10, specifically not right now. We're going to tell them to do it. We're going to tell them to submit photos that it's done, but it's certainly not something that we're going to treat like the end of the world. That tenant has an aggressive breed dog that tries to attack one of my staff members, which Sharon, one of our Houston reps, walked into a property, specifically asked if there was a dog in the property, thought she heard one. They said no. She went into the property. She asked if she could go in the bathroom. They said yes. She opened the bathroom door. Dog attacked her. Obviously, this is not a tenant we placed. This is not a tenant that is going to be able to stay in the property, but this happens. And it can happen with tenants we put in. It can happen with tenants we inherit. It can happen with 750 credit scores with perfect rental history. It can be anybody. And so we have to make sure that we are checking on our tenants. One of the best kind of examples of this I ever had was we had a property where one of our team members felt like there was something going on strange, maybe drug trafficking, something, and they asked to call in a tip. And I said, okay, let's call in the tip, see what comes of it. And they found 2 girls chained in a closet, and they raided the house. And this guy who was perfectly well qualified, perfect credit, perfect rental history, perfect employment, was this big drug lord they'd been looking for and had no idea. And he was maybe 23, perfect tenant. So it doesn't have to be the bad tenants that have these problems, guys, because you don't always know what's a bad tenant. Not every bad tenant that won't take care of your house has bad credit. They don't always go hand in hand. Sometimes someone can have great credit and be a terrible house cleaner. They can be a terrible person for maintaining things or reporting things, or maybe they're doing something they shouldn't do, so they don't want to call in repair items. Maybe they see that brown spot on the ceiling and they don't want to report it because they don't want you coming in, and that's a major roof leak that can cause serious issues. So we have to get in these houses. That's the bottom line. So when you ask me why we do it or how we do it or how we afford to do it, the answer is because there is no other option. It must happen, and thank goodness we are in a state and we have a lease that allows us to do it. Now, the other big thing, contractors have gotten very expensive. That's the whole reason we've built our in-house team. I talk about that a lot, that the prices are ridiculous because all of them have more work than they know what to do with. And so what's happened is fly-by-night contractors, especially in times of crisis, like Houston is a perfect example when it floods or when the hurricanes come in. Everybody and their mother is a roofer. Everybody and their mother knows how to fix these mold remediations. And the problem is some of you guys, you don't like our bids or you don't like our vendors, or maybe you're loyal to somebody and you hire your own. Well, this is a great way for us to check on what they're doing. Whether it's a routine walkthrough or whether it's just a check of contractor work, this is a great way for us to be able to make sure that you're getting what you pay for. We find issues all the time. And so this is one of the reasons why we want to make sure we have the ability in our lease, whether it's a routine walkthrough or a check-in or whatever it may be, or if we made the tenant fix something themselves, we want to make sure that work is done to our quality and our expectation. Now, what allows us to do this? Can't a tenant just refuse access? I get this question all the time from people in other states. This is a snippet of our lease, and I want you to look under access. Before accessing the property, landlord or anyone authorized by landlord will attempt first to contact tenant, but may enter the property at reasonable times without notice to make repairs, show the property, or landlord or anyone authorized by landlord may peacefully enter the property at reasonable times without first attempting to contact tenant. Now, remember, we give notice unless it's an emergency follow-up. If we have a report of something going on or we are checking back in for a violation, if we give them notice, it defeats the purpose. But for routine visits, we give notice. Now, without first attempting to contact tenant and without notice too, survey or review the property's condition and take photographs to document the condition, make emergency repairs. You can see right there how we're allowed to do this. And then under C, you can see very clearly how we can bill them for the lockout to hold them accountable to let us in. So if landlord or landlord's agents have made prior arrangements with tenant to access the property and are denied or not able to access the property because of their failure to make property accessible, and this says including but not limited to any occupant, guest, or invitee, pet, or security device, that would be your keyless deadbolt, prohibiting access to any area of the property, landlord may charge tenant a trip charge of $50. So it's very simple that we are allowed to visit. We don't have to give notice, and we can bill them if they don't allow access. So this is what allows us to do that. Now, let's talk about the different things that we are looking for. And this is under the lease. These are the prohibitions outlined in the lease. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but the general takeaway from this should be that they have no right to modify the property. Okay, they have nothing that they are allowed to do to put the property in risk or in harm's way, and that they can't modify the property. They're not even allowed to use anchors. They can only use small nails in those walls. They can't remove or change fixtures, install alarms without permission. They can't do any of these different types of things. They can't tamper with or ruin smoke detectors. And then this is their general responsibilities. Number one, I use this a lot. Keep the property clean and sanitary. And number two, promptly dispose of all garbage in appropriate receptacles. Okay, these are big ones I use, and it seems like this wouldn't be a big deal, but a dirty property brings bugs. Bugs bring other bugs. So if we have a unit in a multifamily situation where one tenant is filthy, that unit's going to get roaches. It is just law of the universe. So we have to make sure that we cite them for this. But also, if they let that bathtub get dirty and those counters stay grimy, longer it's like that, the harder it's going to be to get it clean if we can at all. And that grime on those old bathtubs that have been refinished can cause them to rust. So very, very important. Now, this number 3 is where it says they have to change their air filters once a month. And this is on both multifamily and single family, so there's no difference there. Number 4, supply and replace all light bulbs, batteries for smoke alarms, etc. And so a lot of people don't realize when they let those light bulbs burn out and they just sit in there, it can damage your fixture. It's actually unsafe. That bulb can burst. So if we go in and we find those bulbs are burned out, we're going to cite them, we're going to photograph it, and they're going to have to provide us photos of that fixture with the new bulbs in place, or we will go and do it for them and bill it to them. There's a lot of different things in here. Number 12 is important. Water the foundation at reasonable and appropriate times. And then number 13 is a big one. Promptly notify landlord in writing of all needed repairs. Now, this is where we define what yard needs to be done. And this can be in single or multifamily, depending on the layout. If you have garden walk-ups or they have their own yard, they may be responsible for that, just depends. But the bottom line is if the tenant has to water the yard, it must be at least 2 times per week unless under water restrictions, no exceptions. So when we go, a lot of people ask, well, how do you know if the tenant's watering? The answer I give is we get a lot of rain here. So the tenant doesn't have to water all that much, only when it's really, really hot. So if the tenant's not watering at all, you're going to see it obviously. There'll be huge cracks in the yard and the soil will actually pull away from the edges of the foundation. So if they're really truly negligent in watering that yard, it's obvious. So smoking, this is a big one. It's explicitly against the lease. If we find any smoking in the property, that is an urgent item. Smoking is very expensive to remediate. Now, we've got ozonator machines and everything that we own. Again, things you don't have to pay for a third party for, but it's not that simple. You know, if somebody smokes in a property and it's bad enough, it can be replacing the carpet, repainting the walls, cleaning the air filters, cleaning the ducts. It is very, very difficult to get rid of that smell. And if you have things like vinyl wood floors or things that we use, it will permeate into everything, even countertops and cabinets. So our goal is to make sure that they are not smoking in that property, and we don't even allow it right outside of the property. So if we go in that property, we smell it in the garage, we smell it in the unit, that's an automatic high-level citation. And I can think of one owner that we have told them this tenant is smoking against the lease for a very long time, and he refuses to remove the tenant. And so you will have the option. If we bring a violation to you and it's not something that puts my staff safety at risk, you don't have to do anything. You can choose to let them keep that. If they have an above ground pool and you're comfortable with it, you don't have to remove it. You don't have to have them remove it. The choice is yours. It's your property. Our job is to give you the best guidance and the tools and the information you need to make the right decision for you. But we're always going to tell you that smoking is a big no-no. Now, most tenants are great. The 1% of the tenants that are not, the one bad tenant could cost an owner years of income. One $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 repair tenant is a huge problem. So for those of you that consider maybe, tenant complained, let's only walk it once every 6 months. Let's only walk it once every 12 months. I would caution you because it only takes one small life event to change the way a tenant lives. Maybe that tenant moved in a spouse or a significant other. Maybe that person has aggression issues. It happens. I've seen it. They punch holes in the walls. They punch holes in the doors. Maybe they've moved in someone that's a sex offender or has a criminal record. Maybe they've let another person move in with them that has 3 children. There are so many different things that can happen in your property. And if you don't have eyes on it, you won't know until it's too late if it's not frequent enough. So things that we're checking: locks and hardware, windows and screens, light fixtures, sink and plumbing, doors and tracks, smoke alarms, HVAC filters, carpet cleanliness, watering the yard, holes dug by tenants, roof issues, fence issues. We are looking for every potential sign that we can reasonably see. We're not perfect, but I promise you my team is really good. Some things that I don't think people realize as well is a lot of our target audience are apartment dwellers. When a lot of your apartments are Class A, when they can get into a home for the same price, it's very easy to convince them to come, especially with how beautiful a lot of our properties are. And so those people have never been a homeowner. They don't know what it is to maintain or monitor a home. They've never had to learn that. They've never experienced it. They may not pay attention. They may not realize a hairline crack is signs of movement, or a little stain in the ceiling is a sign of a roof leak, or that all that condensation when they take a shower and forget to turn the vent fan on can cause mold or all sorts of paint issues. Not everyone is versed in what it is to own a property and maintain a property. So it's important that people who go through there are, especially if the tenant is not. Now, if a minor issue isn't reported by the tenant, it can turn into a major problem. A small roof leak is not a big deal until that small roof leak leaks for 6 months. That's when it becomes a big problem. If you have a tub that's leaking because the drain or something isn't sealed properly, or the wax ring under the toilet, it may only be a small little water stain today. In 6 months, it could be the ceiling caving in. It doesn't take a lot of water at one time to do damage. It can be a slow leak over an extended period of time. And most insurance companies negate coverage for slow leaks. So it's a very risky thing to not be checking on your property, because whether it was a slow leak or a long leak, if you should have known about it or you could have known about it, they're going to hold you accountable to have known about it. So something to keep in mind. Now, when the tenants sign a lease, they understand all the expectations that we have for them. And when we take over a tenancy, generally at renewal, we're going to put them on one of our leases. There's a lot of violations that we find. Unauthorized pets is a big one. Violation of pet policy. Maybe they're supposed to have one dog and they have two. Unauthorized occupants. Maybe there's one individual living in that property who's a female and we find male clothes in the closet. Unsanitary conditions. This is a big one. Property damages, illegal activities. There was a period a few years ago where we were finding marijuana in so many houses. And, you know, may or may not be a big deal in your opinion, but the bottom line is at the time it was against the law, and that's a big deal. And then for those of us in the business, we understand that that's a gateway drug, and it also can lead to criminal activity. So we're real careful with things like that. We're going to cite them. We're going to make them take care of it. If we find a dangerous situation, we will do what is necessary to resolve it. I had someone call on one of our properties the other day that there was an issue with a dog in the backyard that was emaciated and that they were calling animal control to come get the dog. So first thing we did was get involved and make dang sure that dog was safe. And so it doesn't just have to be something to do with the property. It can be something to do with people living in the property, pets in the property, children in the property. We just don't know. So anything like that is a violation of the lease. Anything that is an illegal or dangerous activity or nuisance is a violation of the lease, and those are the items that we're going to handle. Now, let me show you some pictures, and I'll give you a minute to kind of look at some of these. These are all things found at initial walkthroughs. Pretty scary. Some of these are worse than others. You can see a hoarder. You can see major mold. That was a property down in Houston that the owner thought had been remediated by the old property manager. You can see shower damage from a shower head improperly installed and spraying on the walls. You can see a disposal that's clogged and backed up and rusting the sink. You can see a few more hoarders. You can see drywall or a subfloor that's rotted and literally you could fall through the floor. Minor foundation cracking. These are all the different types of things that we're looking for. And these are the types of things that you're not going to find if we don't get in. Any questions? I don't see any questions right now. I see a couple thank yous, and you're welcome. We're proud and very happy to be able to offer this for you guys and for ourselves. And it's something that will not change. And it's, you know, it becomes more and more important. And right now, we are having about 4 plumbing calls a day, which doesn't sound like a lot. We're a big company, but it's because people are home and people are using crazy things because they can't get toilet paper. We have seen so many flushable wipes. Well, flushable wipes can't be used. They can clog the system. I just had to repair a slab leak at one of my multifamily properties because I went against my own rule and I didn't scope the line. So finished renovating my units, didn't scope the plumbing line, and lo and behold, guess what line was collapsed? So all of that being said, right now is a paramount time that walkthroughs are going to be important because people are home and people are taxing the systems in the houses. They are using them more than ever because they're home more than ever. And so again, my commitment to you is that we will do whatever we need to do to get back to doing walkthroughs so long as the cities will allow us. We are essential. We will remain essential. There will be no question that residential maintenance and repairs will remain essential. So it's just about making sure that we can get into the properties, get through rent week. Yes, that is definitely something that is strategic. Let the tenants pay rent. And then we will do whatever we need to do to pick back up walkthroughs. And if we have certain hotspots or areas that are higher risk, we'll just start them back later. But as always, if anybody has any questions or concerns, you can always reach out to us. And I will be back with you all later on this week with more information on the different plans we're talking about and our assessment of the new information given hopefully this afternoon as planned. So thank you, everybody. Stay safe. And as always, it's a pleasure working with you. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon.